So Jesse is here. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right. All right. Here we go. So it looks like Notre Dame's found its answer to its punting void. Irish special teams coordinator Marty Biagi went down under, and he signed a 23-year-old Australian rules football player named James Rendell to be the Irish punter this season. What do you think about going this route as opposed to the transfer portal, which we thought that they were going to do after the loss of Bryce McPherson?
Yeah, so whether or not they go to the transfer portal, whether or not they go this route, all I care about is that they get an effective punter. And I think recently we've seen a transition at the college level and especially at the NFL level where some of these Australian punters have found, been proven to be more effective. I like to think of it as YAP, yards after punt, because that's what Australian punters do. The ball just keeps rolling, right? Like that's a mark of a good punter, in my opinion, is how much field position can we lead or get. And so I don't care if it's all on hang time. I don't care if it's YAP yardages, whatever it might be. And the same goes for whether or not it's in the transfer portal or, this route going international and getting an Australian guy. All I care is that there's a punter on the roster and it's going to help. It's going to help, flip the field position battle.
And I guess Biagi has been on this guy for a little while. He was committed to Hawaii initially. And so Biagi goes down to Australia. And I had heard that he was down in Australia and didn't really, kind of know what was going on. And he comes back with this guy they call the Hammer of Thor. He's 6'6", 225 pounds. His nickname is Thor, but he's 23 years old. So, I mean, he's obviously very physically developed, especially considering the Australian rules football background. I wasn't sure what to make of this when I first heard the news, but then you start looking at some details. He's got a hang time of over 5 seconds. And if you're between 4.4 and 4.7 seconds of hang time, you're doing pretty good. His hang time is over 5 seconds. I don't know if you've ever seen Australian rules football. They used to have a lot of it more like in the early days of ESPN before they had all the, the big broadcast rights to everything else. It's like you'd see Australian rules football on ESPN all the time. But those guys, they've got some serious launch, if we were doing launch angle for punters and kickers, these Australian rules football guys, they get it up in the air. And he's been working with, so it's not like he's just, coming out of Australian rules football and decided he was going to punt. He's been working with this group called Pro Kick Australia, and they've got an interesting website. You should check it out, prokickaustralia.com. They have developed 270 scholarship punters, including 8 Ray Guy Award winners. The last 2 Ray Guy winners have come from Australia, and that includes Vince's new guy, the guy that the Bears drafted in the 4th round.
Oh, the Iowa kicker.
Tory Taylor. That's right. He's an Australian rules football guy who came from this Pro Kick Australia.
Odds don't say. If you ask many analysts, that Iowa punter was the best football player on the team last year. He's the guy you talk about a guy, a team that couldn't score a lot of points offensively in Iowa. Well, they also didn't give up a lot of points defensively. And you want to know why? Because their punter put them in a good field position,
right,
to make it so the teams have to go the entire length of the field. And that's ultimately what I was getting at. I don't care where they come from, how they get here.
As long as they can do it.
As long as you can flip that field position and help the defense out, that's ultimately my biggest concern. But what I will say is a guy who's 6'6", 225 pounds, and looks the way he does, he's going to have no issues on campus with the ladies. I think he's going to be quite the lady magnet.
You throw that accent in there, and it doesn't matter. Those accents go a long way.
Right? I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out to say, so far on a limb, I think he's going to have his own personal cheering section at these games.
I think you're right. I had, speaking of the when I was in the Army, I hung out with these 3 guys from Boston, and they had the thick Boston accents, and all they had to do was open their mouth, and it was like You know, it's like sharks going to chum. You know, the ladies come a running. That, you know, all you got to do is have an accent. And so, you know, the hammer of Thor, Mr. Rendell, looks like he does, and he's 6'6", and he's got that Australian accent and the
and
whole thing.
He's a grown man, basically.
That's
he's a
right.
mature man. You know,
That's
this guy's 23 years old.
That's right. But I mean, you add 5.1 seconds of hang time and the big leg that he's got with the defense that Notre Dame is going to have, and that he could end up being a really big weapon. So I like this. I like this a lot. I like it a lot.
I actually appreciate probably the thinking outside of the box here a little bit, right? Like they could have stuck to the portal and, you know, hey, this is what we're going to confine ourselves to, but they left every avenue open. So I think that's something that should be appreciated.
Yeah. And again, this Pro Kick Australia, like for people concerned about, well, this guy's never punted in a real game and all that kind of stuff. You know, again, you know, like when you look at a guy like Torrey Taylor, there's a guy in the NFL who has kicked for both Philadelphia and he's with Houston now, Cameron Johnston, and the list goes on and on and on. They've developed a lot of these guys. They send them over here. It's a whole, like their whole website is the pitch to these Australian, you know, kids / young men. It's all about developing them and getting them the opportunity to get college scholarships and get an education coming over here to America. And, you know, they've churned out 24 guys who have made it to either the NFL or the Canadian Football League. And they've only been around since 2007. So just based on the sheer numbers, and it seems like a really big win. And Marty Biagi has he's experienced some of these Australian rules guys before. You know, he's coached them before at a couple of his previous stops. And so big hat tip to him for being able to go in there and basically flip a commitment. He was headed to Hawaii, and Marty Biagi goes down there and gets him to come to Notre Dame instead. So I think he could be a really big weapon for Notre Dame. I like this. I'll be curious to see if maybe they kind of, you know, continue down this path in the long run. You know, maybe not just once, like use this as a pipeline going forward.
I was going to say, now you've opened up the door to the opportunity, right? Like if it goes well, why would you limit yourself and not go back to it? And really, ultimately, to me, it's a win-win for both parties, because one, Notre Dame fills a void in their punting issues right now, or their need for a punter, maybe is a better way to put it. But also these guys have they want to go on to the next level. It's not just a hobby. It's not just enough to make it at college. Mm-hmm. They want to go on and be professionals. So again, it's not like, oh, Notre Dame's just, you know, kind of going out, getting this guy, using him, and then tossing him to the side. I really think that it'll allow him to get the exposure that he needs to potentially go on to the next level.
So the transfer portal came and went this week. It closed earlier this week. All 4 Notre Dame quarterbacks are still on the roster. Scale of 1 to 10. How surprised are you that they're all still here?
Yeah, I would say this is a 10 out of 10 for me. I'm actually very surprised because one of recent track record, right? It's felt like every season Notre Dame has had someone enter the transfer portal. But then at the same time, this year made me feel more leery, because you kind of have this cocktail of quarterbacks going on of, you know, one guy who's definitely here for 1 year, right? And then you have a guy here who is in limbo and, you know, potentially might see a starting spot. And then you have 2 guys below him that are uber talented, right? Like super young, uber talented. And a lot of what we've seen today is the younger players getting impatient, especially the talented ones, because they know they can go play. You know, they have the opportunity to get NIL, the opportunity to play right now. And so a lot of those young guys, you know, not being patient, they're gonna take that opportunity. So again, you combine all of those things together. I felt like there was just there was no way that not all quarterbacks were going to stay. I thought definitely 1 would go. I didn't think 2 would go, but I definitely thought 1 would go. So very, very surprised. But I think this actually speaks more to the current quarterback room, who it's being led by, and Gino Guidugli. I think obviously Mike Denbrock probably plays a factor in this, having a better, more renowned offensive coordinator who has a proven track record of, hey, look at my resume here, right? Like Desmond Ridder, he's in the NFL. Jaden Daniels won a Heisman. He just was a top 10, you know, lottery pick in the NFL draft. Like that has to play a part into it too. Like if you stay patient, Look at who is going to be the guy mentoring you. So I think both of those things are great, honestly. And I think that the biggest part is I think everyone in that room thinks they have an opportunity where they could be the starter.
Yeah.
If not this season, but definitely next season with, everything that's going on with Riley Leonard.
Yeah, a lot of great points that you made there. And based on them losing 2 quarterbacks to the portal last year, and especially at the end of the spring, maybe I was a little naive. I didn't think that necessarily one of these guys was going to jump right away, just because you brought in Sam Hartman. But based on last year's experience, I put this at an 8 for me. Not quite as high as you, because I did still feel like when you look at the whole thing and you like what you were talking about there at the end with the development, I think the biggest difference this year is Drew Pine started 10 games in 2022 and he won 8 of them. And, whatever deficiencies there were, we saw him out there. He still won 8 games for Notre Dame, and he put that on film, and it created a market for Drew Pine, right? So, he was able to go out, had film. There was interest in Drew Pine. He actually had more of a body of work than Tyler Buchner, but Buchner also had experience. He started the Ohio State game and the Marshall game, and obviously he won the Gator Bowl, and he played in a bunch of games the year before that in the the package thing behind Jack Cohn. So again, there was film on Tyler Buchner, and teams could look at Tyler Buchner's skills and kind of say, well, how much do we want that? And more importantly, as it turned out, Tyler Buchner had the connection to Tommy Rees, and obviously he went to Alabama. But my point is, Steve Angeli and Kenny Minchey don't have near that. Minchey has virtually none. Angeli at least has a little bit more with the Sun Bowl start and a handful of other reps that he got throughout the season. But I think, to add to what you were talking about there, I think it's still far more beneficial for both of them to stay here at Notre Dame and develop and compete for a spot here for another year rather than go someplace else right now. Because again, like what I'm talking about, I just don't think there is a great demand for either one of those guys. Like, how is there's no guarantee that the situation is going to be any better for either one of those guys if they were to go someplace else, unless they were to transfer down, like to a group of 5 or a lower level, Power 5 type program, So Angeli should finish his degree in another year, so maybe a year from now, it makes more sense for one or both of them. But I think developmentally, as you were talking about with Gino Guidugli and the Mike Denbrock system, I think that they both stand to gain quite a bit just from the developmental experience that they'll get here at Notre Dame by sticking around rather than going someplace else right now and trying to, again, they're not guaranteed that they're going to be starting someplace else. At least with Drew Pine, Drew Pine, he had to go compete for the job, but he felt like he had a better shot right away, and he did have a better shot right away than I think either one of these guys is going to get.
Yeah, and I think the thing that helped Drew Pine is he had a full year on his resume for playing at a program like Notre Dame. There's just no tape out there for CJ Carr, Kenny Minchey, and outside of, for Steve Angeli, outside of, a bowl game against second and third stringers and mop-up duty and a few other games, like what real good tape is there out there for Steve Angeli that says, hey, I'm a Power 5 school and I can come be your quarterback and we can win 8 or 9 games. Like, Drew, say what you want about Drew Pine, he at least had that, on film that, and he didn't really have a great wide receiver target outside of Michael Mayer, right? So it's like you consider what he did with just his primary target being a tight end. I mean, the tape doesn't lie. If you're a team that is in need of a quarterback and wins, I mean, look what Drew Pine did. So I think that's another factor as well. These guys just don't have any experience out there on tape. And so what would incline a coach to be like, yes, I'm going to bring you in. All chips are on you. You go ahead and be our starting quarterback.
Exactly. So, I'm surprised again, because they lost 2 quarterbacks last year in the offseason, and they end up keeping the whole room full this year. And that's got to be pretty rare to stack that much talent in one room. And of course, they've got more talent coming in next year as well. So an Indianapolis Star writer is catching a lot of grief for writing a column this week saying Caitlin Clark could do for the WNBA what Larry Bird did for the NBA. Do you buy or sell the idea that Clark could be her league's Bird?
So I'm going to need a little bit of a clarification here. Are we talking more so like, is Bird kind of being compared to what Jackie Robinson did to baseball? Is that the aspect of it? Or is it more so? Is that why they're catching controversy? I guess I just need a little bit more context for the comparison.
Here's how I would explain it. I realize you weren't around, you know, when Larry Bird came into the NBA, but like now the first key part to this is my counter, you know, to her argument, and I haven't got to read the article because it's behind a paywall, and I'm not going to pay for, you know, pay for a subscription just to read this one article. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson came into the league together, and they played against each other in, you know, the NCAA championship. Larry Bird for Indiana State, Magic Johnson for Michigan State. And so there was already, you know, a partial rivalry there. And then Larry Bird goes to the Boston Celtics and Magic Johnson goes to the LA Lakers, the two biggest rivals in the history of the NBA. And then, you know, like if you want to add, you know, this guy's white, this guy's, you know, what the whole thing, you know, that was a component to this whole thing. But my point is, it wasn't just Larry Bird resuscitating the NBA, because like when these guys came into the NBA, they were tape delaying, you know, like NBA finals games, you know, and like the draft was in a smoke-filled back room, you know, like, you know, like somewhat like it's depicted, you know, on that, you know, the series, you know, the LA Lakers Showtime series on HBO. My point is, the league was at an all-time low when these two guys came in. And because it wasn't just Larry Bird, I guess would be, you know, and again, I haven't got to read the article because of the, you know, the whole paywall deal, but just seeing that, you know, like her point on this, it wasn't just Larry Bird lifting the NBA. It was Larry Bird and the rivalry with Magic Johnson that lifted the NBA. You know, again, they played each other in the college championship game. They came to the NBA together for each team's biggest rival. They played against each other 3 times in the NBA finals in the 80s. Magic won 2 of them. Bird won 3 overall titles, one of them against the Lakers in the 80s. So my point is, it can't just be, you know, like if that's the comparison you're going to make, it has to, like, for Caitlin Clark to be Larry Bird. Well, who's the Magic counterpoint? You know,
right.
like if Diana Taurasi wants to keep, you know, kind of, you know, throwing all these darts at Caitlin Clark, then maybe that becomes the short-term rivalry, because obviously she's getting older. She's going to have to retire at some point. But it does seem a little bit Indiana myopic, you know, to just, you know, make the Caitlin Clark to Larry Bird comparison because of the fact that Larry Bird was from Indiana, you know, the hick from French Lick and all that kind of stuff. So I think she can bring a lot of attention to the NBA. But again, you know, like to truly drive interest and, you know, and like continual interest, there needs to be a rivalry. You know, like look at the whole, like the Angel Reese, Iowa, Caitlin Clark, LSU thing. Like the Elite 8 game, remember, was the highest rated women's college basketball game at that point before the Final Four and championship games the following weekend. So I think that there needs to be a rivalry involved in this to truly drive overall interest. I think Caitlin Clark will bring more interest to the sport, but it wasn't just Larry Bird who really, you know, brought the NBA up. It was that rivalry. It was that Celtics, Lakers, and Bird Johnson rivalry that really lifted it.
Yeah, so in terms of that comparison, I think it's a lazy comparison based off of what you're saying. You know, it wasn't just Larry Bird. It was Larry Bird in combination with Magic Johnson and that rivalry that started to form, right? And so I think it drew in a more diverse amount of fans, and that ultimately it was, you know, what helped the NBA. So I think, you know, in order for that to happen, Caitlin Clark needs a Joker to her Batman, right? Like someone that she is constantly feuding with.
Exactly.
Who are playing high leverage, high stake games, right? Do I think Caitlin Clark will have an effect of bringing up the overall relativity and the, you know, the audience, the WNBA game? Most definitely. I mean, they're already moving games to bigger venues because, you know, they need more capacity in these arenas. And so, in that aspect of things, yeah, 100%. Caitlin Clark is going to bring more popularity. She is going to boost up the NBA that has, you know, probably, for lack of better term, struggled over, you know, it's always kind of struggled in comparison to the NBA. So I think that she is going to bring things closer in terms of, you know, the how we saw the women's game struggle in terms of at the college level. I think she is definitely going to do things to prop it up at the professional level now.
Right. She keeps playing her game at that anywhere close to the level that she was playing at Iowa. She's definitely going to prop it up. Now, you know, like Taurasi's points are, well, it's, you know, you got these old strong women here. It's going to be tougher and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
But she's a shooter.
You know, yeah. And that's, you know, Taurasi has also been critiquing, you know, like the fundamentals of her shot and stuff like that. It's like, you know, come on. Are you just cranking to be cranking? It can't all be about you.
That's what I mean.
It can't all be about you.
The spotlight is off of her.
That's exactly what it is.
She's winding down her career.
Yes.
And she's got to let everyone know that I'm still the best. Don't get distracted by this young, flashy player that's now entering the league.
And, you know, look, if, like I said, if she wants to keep, you know, throwing some gas on that fire, I think that that's only good for the whole, you know, like I said, I think that's going to be good. It's going to draw more interest. And if Indiana and Phoenix can end up playing in the WNBA championship finals, I think that would be great. You know, the old vet and the young rook and all that kind of stuff. Like, that would be great. It would be nothing but good, but that's what you need. You need some true rivalry to help fuel the fire, I think. Okay, so you might notice I'm wearing my old school Houston Oilers shirt today. Fill in the blank. It's blank that the University of Houston plans to wear powder blue uniforms that are very similar to the ones worn by the defunct Houston Oilers. Now, they wore them in their season opener last year, and after they did, the NFL threatened to sue them because the league says they were, quote, blatantly copying, end quote, the Oilers' uniforms.
It is on point for the No Fun League that they are threatening to sue a college university for largely using what they think to be, you know, a similar pattern or scheme or, you know, whatever it might be when it comes to these uniforms. I got a message for the NFL. Look across high school, college, like they're all just recycling the same team names, logos, colors, concepts. Like it's not just a specific Houston issue. Like it's like going to Taco Bell. You got the same 5 ingredients. They're just mixing them up different ways, right? Like that's all they do at the high school and college level is they're just mixing and matching logos that are already out there, team names that are already out there. And so again, the NFL is the no fun league. You are not allowed to have fun in the NFL. So I'm not shocked by this. And I'm actually, you know, it's just a little bit disappointing because the NFL continues this reputation of being no fun. So like, why do you keep doing these things?
And there's so many things that go with it, you know, like to your point about other colleges and high schools and stuff, recycling logos and colors and those kind of things. Do the Iowa Hawkeyes football uniforms not look strikingly similar to the Pittsburgh Steelers uniforms? I mean, obviously throw out the helmet, the rest of the uniform, there's not that much difference between the two. It's black and whatever, you know, gold or yellow and white stripes and stuff like that. You know, like since when is color scheme a copyright issue? Like that's what I want to know. I saw a picture of these. I didn't even realize they wore these things last year. And then I saw this article and they showed a picture. And it's like the reason I've got this shirt, you know, I was obviously not a Houston Oilers fan, but I love the look. I love the look. And like the Titans could have taken the whole thing with them when they went to Tennessee, but they scrapped it and they went with the ugly uniforms that they've had for the last 25 years or whatever it is. You know, they've worn the throwbacks a couple of times. They look 10 times better than what they actually wear game in and game out. You know, they obviously weren't going to take the Derrick with them. And, you know, like in the oil Derrick was not on the Houston Cougars uniforms that they used last year, but like all the other stuff, the stripes, you know, the red stripes and, you know, the powder blues and the whole thing, they look sharp. And so I guess what Houston is going to do, they're going to tweak the color a little bit. They're going to make it a different shade of blue than the, you know, pure Columbia that the Oilers used in the 1970s. But why not just inject more of this powder blue into all of their uniforms, and then you have a reason for using it, and then you can do whatever you want with it, But again, like the Titans don't use the color scheme. The Houston Texans don't use the color scheme. The NFL is, like they actually issued a cease and desist order last year when the Houston Cougars did this. It's like, come on, it's colors. And like Houston said in their response, Mississippi, Louisiana Tech, they both use somewhat similar colors.
Ole Miss
with their Ole Miss, exactly. They use similar, other powder blue. So
I'm looking at these side by side right now. The only thing that's really the same is the stripe going down the middle of the helmet. The jersey color and the numbers are relatively the same, but different decals. Houston has stripes on their shoulders. Those are on the Oilers uniforms. It's like, it's kind of crazy because like you were saying, this isn't like it's some team's primary uniform. This is an alternate NFL uniform that gets worn once a year for a team that doesn't even exist anymore.
That hasn't been used. Yeah. Like the actual team that wore it hasn't even existed for the last 25 years. It's just totally petty of the NFL.
No fun league.
Yep. Just, raining on everybody else's parade. And, and here's a shocker. Like Houston actually, loved the Oilers until they packed up and left. And I think it was actually a really, pretty ingenious idea of the University of Houston.
Couldn't you technically, like, if you're Houston, I would argue I have more rights to this because I'm still in Houston.
We're still in Houston. Yes. Right.
What?
That's right. The team that was here moved to Tennessee, and they don't even use the colors until they've only started, just like the last couple years, they've done the throwback stuff. I don't think they really ever did the throwback stuff until the last year or two. Like,
it's mind numbing.
I know.
It's like, this is what we get concerned about.
Yeah.
Not letting guys get off with, whatever and minimal suspensions. And
this is, it's not like it's Notre Dame or Michigan or USC, like a traditional type cut. Like this is Houston.
This is a school that was in the death penalty.
Yeah. Trying to do something different, generate a little interest and, give a little throwback to the team that, like the older time people like me remember. Have a little fun. No fun.
I guarantee people in Houston would appreciate those college Houston jerseys more than seeing the Tennessee Titans wear them one time a year.
For sure. Absolutely. Get over it, NFL. Again, it's colors. It's color scheme. How is that a copyright issue? Trademark, whatever. So the NBA is shopping its TV rights deals around while ESPN is likely to continue to broadcast games. There's a good chance that NBC and Amazon could replace TNT as a broadcast partner. And in fact, I saw an update today since I came up with this question that, it's looking like TNT's days are pretty much done. And so that means inside the NBA with Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, and Kenny Smith may or may not continue to exist. I did see a report today that Ernie Johnson, the host, is going to stay at TNT. So he would not be on the free agent market potentially. So the three players and Ernie have obviously combined to form one of the most iconic TV studio shows in any sport of all time. So if they're not on TNT anymore, what's the best landing spot if they're able to keep that group together? ESPN, NBC, Amazon, someplace else?
I just have to say before I answer this would be a complete travesty. You're getting rid of – I know a lot of people probably don't ultimately care about the NBA, so like this is like a whatever. But like for people who actually enjoy watching the NBA and getting like good content, Inside the NBA is literally the best NBA show across any network. It's not even close. Like you're taking away – it is a award-winning production. Like it is actually crazy that this is a consideration that they want to take away the most successful and popular, inside the NBA type coverage. Man, I can't believe that. But if I had to pick one, I would not go to ESPN. I think ESPN is horrible as is. They're dull, they're drying, they're annoying. There's no sort of combination there that I think.
Well, that's why they need these guys, because ESPN has been trying to copy that show for years, and they've never even been able to come close.
I would stay away from NBC because I think there would be more rules on like Barkley and I don't think they could genuinely be themselves like they could be on TNT. And so I think my choice would be Amazon, just because I don't think you can go to the rival in ESPN because they're trying to copy you. Just let them continue to be boring. You can't go to NBC because I think there'd be too many restrictions. I think Amazon is enough of its own up-and-coming platform, especially in terms of NBA coverage, that they necessarily wouldn't care as much because all they would care about is getting people to watch. That's what Amazon cares about, right? So, like, I don't think they'd care if Charles Barkley is, dropping an F-bomb or an A-bomb or whatever it might be. I don't know if you saw last night, but he went on a rant calling all the other networks JAs because they want to criticize coaches instead of the GMs that put together these terrible rosters.
Oh, I didn't see that. Like you're blaming
these coaches instead of the GMs who are putting together these crappy rosters. And then all these other networks want to go around and, say these coaches suck just because they want to suck up to the players, right? It's never the players' fault. It's always the coach's fault. So again, I just don't think you would get that genuine, feel, experience thoughts if they were go to someplace like NBC. I want them where they can be 100% authentic themselves. And I think Amazon would give you the best opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think of those Amazon would, because like NBC, you would obviously be on broadcast TV, and that's, but like, and I don't know what, like if NBC would just do a Sunday game of the week, which I think they used to do back in the day, or if they would actually be in the business of doing weeknight games, obviously, which, TNT currently does. But I mean, if they're doing night games, like even like say it's during the playoffs, local news at 11 o'clock and the Jimmy Fallon show that comes after it are two huge priorities. Like right now, these guys go, until 1 or 1:30 in the morning, just kind of doing their thing. It's like TNT doesn't care. Like, keep going. People are watching, So I think NBC would make it difficult. I think from a format standpoint, that could also make it difficult with ESPN. And ESPN tends to want to put all kinds of rules and boundaries and, all that kind of stuff on there. And they want them to do so many other shows, so like that could be a factor as well.
Yeah, Charles Barkley isn't trying to be working 5 days a week.
But we're in a different age. What are we doing right now? We're doing a live YouTube podcast, right?
Yeah, like who's to say they don't come up with their own?
And that's what I'm saying. Like Amazon, say Amazon is doing, like a one night a week type thing. I could see them doing that, but why not do their own thing? Whether it's on YouTube or, FanDuel is doing a lot of stuff now, draft, all these different
I was going to say, like, even though they haven't officially done this, they've done similar things like this through like the NBA app where they'll have a bunch of guys sitting in a room and watching a game together and just kind of commentating. Like, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can go about this. I just want to find the way that allows them to stay together and be the most authentic. Because like, I'm not kidding you, that they're half the reason probably why I got into the NBA, because watching games, like those shows could be their own standalone shows after games. Like they are hilarious.
And that's what I'm saying.
So insightful, like everything about it.
If they just did a live podcast like we do, so you're doing it live on YouTube or whatever your video platform is, whether it's FanDuel, because FanDuel obviously has its FanDuel TV and stuff like, whatever platform it happens to be on, and then just put up the audio and let people listen to it the next day as a podcast. I think that they could do as much of that as they want. They'd probably get even more out of it than what they're getting out of right now with TNT.
Shout out to Ernie though. That man is loyal. He said, I am not leaving Turner Broadcasting.
He's been there forever. At this
That's
point.
why he's the best. He's just, there's no other way to put it, like he's
But he's obviously been through a lot and weathered a lot, and like he kept on trucking and doing his thing, both with his own personal health and with his son's health that they adopted, and just he's always been a total pro and done a great job. Yep, done a great job, and you're absolutely right. I'm like the most casual of casual NBA fans, but like especially this time of year during the playoffs, like I'll go out there and I'll flip it on just to hear those guys kind of go off on each other and on different topics for a little bit. That's why I think it would make a great podcast, because they could just riff and do their own thing, and do it on their own schedule, do as much as they want. I think that would be a great option for them. And that somebody would roll out the money.
Oh, yeah.
Make it, I don't know how much money it would take to make it happen when you've got
at least a pilot
big names, but yeah, why not? Give it a shot. Okay, so Mike Trout out for the rest of the season with a knee injury. It's barely a blip, though, on the sports radar. And I heard this question on the SI Media podcast today with Jimmy Traina, and I thought this was worth talking about. Do you think it's because Mike Trout is boring because he plays for the Angels, or just because it's baseball? Is that why this, the Mike Trout news is barely a blip right now?
I think it is, one, because it is Angels baseball. And where do the Angels play? They play on the West Coast. So, a lot of fans like me over here on the East Coast, I can't watch Mike Trout unless I want to be up until 1 o'clock in the morning, midnight. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm talking for home games, obviously, right? And so I think you factor in, one, it's the Angels who, and I'm going to double check this, haven't had more than 85 wins since the 2014 season.
Wow.
And before that, it was the 2007 or 2009 season. And so when we're talking about, since Mike Trout has been with the Angels, they've had maybe one season over 90 wins. That's the biggest issue. He plays for a franchise that ultimately sucks, and they don't really, not that they don't care about baseball, but they just haven't been good. And now that, you compile that with they're on their West Coast, it's just an unfortunate situation. So I think it's not Mike Trout. Mike Trout is a fantastic baseball player. And it's actually, and I'll even double down on this because the Angels are in Cleveland for a 3-game series this weekend. I was going to go to every game until Mike Trout tore his knee. Now I have the weather is supposed to be bad. There's a chance of rain every day this weekend. And so I was going to tough it out. I love seeing players like Mike Trout, right? Like, he's the best in baseball when healthy, right? And so, again, it's not a Mike Trout issue. It's the Angels franchise, and it's the fact that they're on the West Coast and you can't stay up late and watch them just about every game. But I think that the bigger issue with this is, this is Mike Trout. Mike Trout has played one healthy season in the last 5 now. He's played one full season in the last 5 seasons.
That doesn't help either because he's hurt all the time.
He's hurt. He had two seasons where he was hurt. He won an MVP, and now these past 2 years, he's been hurt again, right? And so when you're the greatest player in baseball, you got to stay healthy. And I think that's ultimately – that's what I'm, I guess, more concerned about. I don't think Mike Trout is – I think his time is up. When you have injuries like this year after year after year, and he's in his 30s now, I just don't see this getting any better.
For as great an athlete as he is, that he almost needs to just stop playing the outfield and just DH.
First base, DH. Like, he just needs to be a hitter.
Save the legs. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. If he was a New York Yankee, a Boston Red Sox, a Philadelphia Philly, maybe a New York Met, like, it would be much bigger news if he was East Coast and one of those premier type East Coast teams. But at the same time, baseball is also slipping off the radar. And it just, like, you used to be able to flip on ESPN during the day and you'd see Tim Kirkjian and you'd see Buster Olney and Jason Stark and those guys with all kinds of baseball information. And I mean, it's only been probably like, this, I realize saying 20 years is, that's actually a pretty long time, but like, Baseball Tonight used to be on multiple nights a week, and there were multiple national broadcasts of baseball on ESPN during the week. Like when we were in college, my buddy Randy and I, again, like this goes back more than 30 years at this point, but it seemed like Baseball Tonight was on every night, and you were, like it was still really a national sport. And unfortunately, it's become such a regional sport. Like there's still great interest within each major league market, but as a national sport, it's just not there anymore. And so I think that has some effect as well. Like people right now are probably going, they're talking about baseball. We get the little ribbings every now and then from DK.
So I think the final component to this thing, is Mike Trout just isn't a sexy superstar in terms of baseball players. He's a very
it doesn't
reserved
help.
guy. He's very quiet. He just shows up and goes to work. And that shouldn't be a bad thing. But unfortunately, in terms of baseball, we want guys with swag. We want guys wearing big chains. We want guys bat flipping. We want guys, you know, taunting pitchers as they're rounding the bases. We want, you know what I mean? We want the Manny Machados. We want the Bryce Harpers. We want
you want Pat Murphy going after home plate umpires.
That's what I mean.
The other day.
I knew you would love that video just because of that. And I love that guy breaks down every word of what they're saying back and forth.
I know.
Because that was great watching that umpire and Pat Murphy get into it, right? But what led to that? A guy pimping a home run,
that's right,
and bat flipping and walking around the bases. And so a pitcher got it in his feelings and decided that he wanted to plunk a guy 3-0 like he's not a professional pitcher, right? And so that's the thing. Mike Trout isn't bat flipping. Mike Trout isn't staring down pitchers. He's not wearing gold chains. He's not wearing, you know, wristbands and the Jordan custom cleats. He's just showing up and playing baseball.
That's right. And it's just not sexy.
It's just not sexy.
And sex
for
sells.
Someone who you want to be the superstar, the face of baseball.
Yes.
And lead a revolutionary, you know, generational change of bringing attention back to baseball, because the young kids love the bat flips. They love the gold chains. They love the swagger. It's just Mike Trout's not that.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we're going to end it with that tonight. Mike Trout, not that, not the sexy choice. Great player. Hopefully he can get back and
just be a Barry Bonds, man. That's all you got to do these last 5 years. Just ride off into the sunset and hit bombs.
That's right.
It was funny because, sorry, I keep distracting here, but my friend and I, before the baseball season, we were looking at a ton of futures. We literally sat down and looked at MLB futures that we liked. Mike Trout came up, and it's like, it was basically lead the league in home runs. And what do we say to ourselves? If Mike Trout stays healthy, it's a no-doubter. But
can't stay healthy.
Just can't stay healthy.
Yep. All right, that's going to do it. Jess, appreciate it as always. Hit the like button, subscribe, rate, review on your podcast. Don't forget, Friday Rapid Fire Show is a 5 o'clock Eastern time show. So it'll be all three of us, I believe. You're here tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
All right. All three of us, Jesse, Vince, and me. We will be here 5 o'clock live on Friday. We will talk to you then. Hit that like button before you leave. We will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.